This is Conversation Zimbabwe, your area perspective into what's happening in the Zimbabwe economic space. I'm Eben Mabunda. Welcome to the program. In 2021, the retail sector of Zimbabwe grew by 5.1%. In the first quarter of 2022, the sector is beset by a myriad of economic challenges, among them a fuel crisis, power outages, foreign currency issues, as well as a depreciating local currency, not forgetting the unabated inflation. On the cards, we take a look at the sector in as far as the state of the retail and wholesale sector of Zimbabwe. And joining us for a conversation where that is concerned is the president of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, Mr. Denford Mutashu. Sir, hello and welcome to Conversation Zimbabwe.
Thank you for having me on the good program.
Fantastic. To get the ball rolling, let's talk about the sector's recovery from the pandemic, a growth of 5.1% in 2021, and of course we are in the first quarter of 2022. Can you give us just some light where that is concerned?
I think if you look at the 5.1 growth in 2021, it came at the back of successive lockdowns that impacted quite negatively on the sector, because our anticipation was to grow at least for around 6%. Given the size of the sector in recent years, it has grown in terms of population, shop population density per given shopping center. You look at urban areas, towns, rural areas, rural district councils. I'm sure you will agree with me that even the shop occupants has tremendously increased over the years. So when COVID came, yes, we had to comply with quite a lot of restrictions that came with limited operating hours, limited movement of people from city to city, or even intra-city, customer movement. The movement of goods as well was quite affected because of the delays owing to the roadblocks and many other challenges that we had to make do with. And also remembering that we also suffered quite greatly in terms of employees, contracting the COVID-19 virus, and when that happened, a store would be forced to close for about 3 days while you are satisfying the requirements of the Ministry of Health and other government department requirements. All employees had to be taken out for testing, and of course some for quarantine at home.
Right.
So that actually then affected, because if you're looking at a retail or a wholesale store, if you close it for 3 days, that's quite huge. Right. It has got quite a huge impact. It's quite many days, let alone when you reopen, you are faced with limited operating hours. Right. So those challenges, of course, the exchange rate instability, especially on the payroll market, as well as the inflationary pressures. Right. We are happy. We've been working with the government, and I think from 2020 July, inflation was reduced from around 837%, to the current, plus or minus 60%. Right. That's quite tremendous, but that 60% is still quite high. And going back to the 5.1%, it was significant. It also goes to show the contribution that is made by the retail and wholesale sector across the distribution chain in support of the value manufacturing value chain. So we are a very critical component of the value chain. When you talk of production, increased productivity, increased production output, increased capacity utilization that we currently talk about, moving from around 34, an average of 34% to beyond 47% capacity utilization is no mean achievement. It can only be made possible when the retail and wholesale sector is functional. So yes, the first quarter came, and unfortunately we had some relaxations of the COVID-19 restrictions, moving, I think, from level 4 to the current level 2, and that has actually gone a long way in aiding the recovery process by the sector, because now we can operate at normal operating hours. Some can open at at 8 in the morning and close at 8 in the evening, and even other support services. You're looking at even other retail spheres. Alcoholic beverage bottle stores, clothing, hardware and electrical, and of course the larger part, which is the grocery retail space. So if you compute that, or you put that together, it can actually then indicate that we are in good space despite the challenges that I have spoken about. Issues of inflation, issues of capacity utilization that has also increased within the retail sector itself. Capacity utilization had actually declined to around 40% at the peak of the restrictions and the lockdowns. But so far, the majority are operating at 100%. And I think that is something that is cause for celebration despite the challenges that we're still facing.
Quite elaborate. Let's talk about the raging issue, which would of course be that of the foreign currency. A lot of players, owing to the fact that some of the products that we consume within the Zimbabwean retail and wholesale space is actually imported. So there would be, of course, the issue of foreign currency allocations on the interbank, which have, seen some delays in the process. What's the current status, and how do you as a body feel about what's been happening, should I say, perhaps over the past quarter?
It has been quite problematic, and the issue of the foreign currency environment is inseparable from pricing issues across the board. If you look at the issues of pricing, it has largely been determined by the availability or lack of it of foreign currency for a particular player, be it the formal or the informal sector. But if you're looking at it from the angle of the informal setting, which currently is standing above 75% of the retail space, it then signifies a huge determinant factor in terms of the pricing that you would then see of those happening in the sector. Why? Because the majority of those players in the informal sector naturally would procure and source their foreign currency on their own, and largely participate on the parallel market exchange, as opposed to going to the auction, because they don't qualify for the majority of reasons, one of which they are informal, they are not registered, and the requirements that actually that one faces to participate on the auction system, they don't meet. They cannot meet them. But if you look at the formal sector, we have actually been one of the biggest consumers of the foreign currency that is coming out of the auction system. Quite a number of bigger players have benefited from the auction system. Even other SMEs have also benefited from the auction system. Why? Because sometimes we can talk about the local manufacturing sector contributing 80% of basic commodities into the retail space. But alongside that, you also have then a significantly large number of product list that is still being imported from other countries, that then cause for the requirement of the foreign currency for a particular player. So the distribution chain has also benefited from the auction system. But I think the issue that has got to be clarified is that what is the percentage of that foreign currency that a player accesses on the auction system in relation to the total foreign currency requirement by a particular brand. It's around between 30 and 40% at most. So that then leaves the player to source foreign currency from elsewhere. But what we have encouraged recently, after a bit of relaxation by the authorities, is to say a player should be able to harness more foreign currency from the sale of their products and be able to pay for those goods and services at the supplier or at the manufacturer using internal sources. So that has actually been happening, and it is why you also may have seen that at some point the traffic to the auction system, despite the challenges that are there, sometimes reduces, because a player can be able to source foreign currency from the internal foreign currency receipts that they collect within the store. But that phenomena has largely been driven by the value chain, because we are at the tail end of the retail, rather at the value chain as the retail and wholesale sector, where we get goods from the manufacturers, sell them on to the consumers. But you also may have picked it that not many suppliers and manufacturers can actually give you goods on terms. The terms have literally been discarded. So all the goods that you may see in the store are paid up front. And probably 50 to 60% of that payment is foreign currency. So I'm sure now you will see where the challenge is for the formal players. It is one area that we have identified as one of the biggest threats to the sector, because if a supplier or a manufacturer demands payment in foreign currency, which the majority are doing, it becomes very difficult for formal players who, by the nature of the economic matrix in the country, they are not attracting foreign currency receipts as much as they are informal players. Why? Because of the official rate that you've got to apply when you are pricing your goods and services in the store. So what it leaves the player in is a quagmire, because on one end you cannot access stocks. The manufacturer is demanding payment in USD. On the other end, there is unfair competition, because the informal guy is operating just next to your door. Zimra doesn't visit him. The financial intelligence unit doesn't visit him. NASA doesn't visit him. He has got not many overheads that the formal store has got to meet. You have got to pay rentals if you don't own the building or the premise. You've got to pay your employees, and in terms of payee, you also have got to pay your VAT and all other taxes. You also have got to pay your rentals, your shop licenses, and that have also escalated. Unfortunately, most of the local councils are living in their own sphere, because like recently we had to deal with the issue of the Blue Whale Council, where they raised shop license fees to astronomical fees. I think it was raised to around 208,000 Zimbabwean dollars from a mere 11,000 Zimbabwean dollars. And of course, after deliberations, after engagements, we engaged the Ministry of Local Government, we engaged Blue Whale Council directly, and so far, the outcry that you saw even on the parking space, it was quite huge, because at some point you saw that parking bays were empty. The generality of the motorists could not afford. So we still need to live in a realistic manner, and before we price, let's also identify whether there is capacity for the general consumers, for the general members of the public to pay, the ability to pay. Because remember, the salaries and incomes have been an issue over a very long time. Look at the issues between government and the civil servants, even within the private sector. majority of employees demanding payment of their salaries in USD. If you then look at the capacities within those, it then becomes very difficult.
Just to jump in there, the USD factor. We've seen the local unit shed quite some value. At the same time, we've got different market rates that are being employed across the board. On the formal market, it's just below 1:140. On the parallel market, you have rates ranging as high as 1:250. Bringing that degree of disparity between the formal and, of course, the parallel market. What is the panacea in as far as your body is concerned? Completely to dollarize, get rid of the Zim dollar. In your capacity, what is the remedy under these circumstances?
It's quite difficult to, as we speak right now, to say whether we dump the de-dollarization trajectory and dollarize completely, adopt the US dollar. It's very difficult because you may also appreciate that at the time that we dollarized, it was also very difficult to come up with a meaningful monetary policy thrust. Why? Because you haven't got your own currency. You cannot even, sometimes it even becomes very difficult to deal with money supply issues because we don't print the US dollar. So in an environment that has got largely that uses its own currency, it has got advantages, especially when you are looking at exports. We became very uncompetitive at the time that we dollarized. It is the reason why we lost a lot of ground in the export market ahead of countries like South Africa, Zambia, Mozambique, and Malawi, etc., and Botswana. Why? Because they've got their own currency, which is stable. You look at the Zambian kwacha, even the Malawian kwacha. It has been there, despite the fluctuations that you can see with their currency. They still continue to use their own currency. But I think what we have here is a huge and growing appetite for the US dollar. It's natural because once you dollarize, sometimes it's very difficult then to jump back into usage of your own currency. And I'm sure you have seen in many countries, there are quite a number of examples. So I think that is the quagmire right now to say, out there is another market that is operating, which I think it has got its own governor, it has got its own minister of finance, but that's the shadow market. So the biggest challenge we have in our country is the shadow market. And if we don't deal with it, we will continue to probably run in cycles because that shadow market, if you ask me, it also replicates on the high level of informalization in the country. So we need to deal with that quite decisively to say, what do we want to do? Because the rejection of the Zimbabwe dollar will continue. And the appetite to use the Zimbabwe dollar will also continue. Government at some point didn't help matters. When it started charging some certain duties, import duties in foreign currency, you look at the vehicle importation. Until recently, when we engaged and government responded, then we could actually provide more space and more demand for the local currency.
Right. In the name of dealing with the challenges, as you rightly pointed out, could it be that what we are seeing on the shadow market, which you alluded to just now, is indicative of the market forces of supply and demand that are reflecting in this shadow market, and perhaps the lack of adequate flows that could be prevailing on the former market, and perhaps reports of manipulation of the exchange rate on the former market, perhaps by the central bank?
It's really symptomatic of probably some deep-rooted underlying challenges that we will need to confront head on. And if we don't do that, continue to skate around those issues, we may continue to face this currency issue over a very long time. I say so because we're looking at realism and idealism. Ideally, the environment that one wishes, if you're an ordinary citizen, an ordinary chap out there, you want to to go to your bank, to get the bank to keep your money, your savings, If you go back tomorrow, you should be able to withdraw it as and when you want to use it, whether it's local currency or USD. As long as you have left your money in the bank, there shouldn't then be conditions for you to take it out at the time that you wish to use it. Just like if you are a business, a business person, it is the same scenario. You want to keep your money in the bank, and when your supplier wishes to give you goods, you want to pay for them, you should also be able to go and pay for the goods without necessarily having to go through certain conditionalities. And I think that then is tied with the issue of confidence. The banking sector plays a significant role in terms of current confidence. Its actions, inactions, whatever that one experiences, that experience has got a huge bearing on how one accepts or have got confidence in their own currency or not. So we need also to go back to basics and look at that. That is the ideal environment, but probably currently it may not be the scenario that we see on the ground. Realistically, what we see is a chap who is not formally employed, living a very good life, better life than you and me who are actually waking up every day, put on our nice ties, go to the office, do A, B, C, D, go back home. Really, if you have got to stand here or sit here and want to depend on your formal job for your personal upkeep, sometimes you may find that you may not be able to take your kids to school. If there is a sickness in the family, you may not be able to take your kid to the private hospital or to the doctor. So those are the fundamentals that we are saying. If we touch on the fundamentals, deliverables, those touch points, certainly we will win the people's hearts, because this is basically what the people wish the environment obtaining in their society. But in an environment where a money changer is richer than a chief executive officer of a big corporation, then what does that do to that CEO? Do you continue holding your position, or you would rather go under the tree and start changing the money as it were? So we've got those scenarios that I'm giving simply because I want to come back to your question. Yes, we have had the auction system. It has helped quite significantly. If we didn't have the auction system, probably we could be talking about exchange rates of some, probably we could have been around 500 or even 1,000 to 1 if we didn't have the auction. So it has been holding the rate because it has been providing cheap funding to the productive sector. Unfortunately, we've had malls that have also gone in and taken the money, take it back to the parallel market, abuse that we of course noticed. The Reserve Bank has acknowledged and has even published some lists of corporations and individuals that have also been abusing the auction system. Let's plug those loopholes. The Dutch system is under the current scenario. I think we need to sustain it. It has got to continue to support the productive sector, be it mining, manufacturing, and also the importation of drugs and other essentials like capital goods. It has got to continue, but it is the supply that is quite key. The supply of foreign currency into the auction system. If there are gaps, just like we noticed at the beginning of the year and even end of last year, where probably it was behind by at least minimum 3 weeks up to 7 weeks, that then affects the procurement of raw materials, supply of goods and services, and the limited goods. The forces of supply and demand will kick in because supply has been disrupted. So for us, we need to produce more. Let's go full throttle. Each and every producer, each and every entity, manufacturer, productive sector player must be able to get sufficient foreign currency for them to produce and produce and produce. Let's flood the market with more and more goods so that there is even also competition and there isn't any shortages, and the pricing on its own, there is going to be self-correction in the pricing matrix. And even if you compare our pricing, it's mad. There's a lot of madness. If you compare our prices for certain goods with our peers in the region, you would actually then be surprised to say, so who are we pricing these goods for? Because if you look at the levels of incomes, not many people can afford those goods and basic goods and services.
Right. Let's talk about the taxes that you made reference to earlier. There have been complaints about how we've got exorbitant taxes and these very high duties, perhaps to single out the vehicle sector. We as a nation do not have a vehicle manufacturing sector. We depend on vehicle imports, and yet we still have duties that remain very much in exorbitant levels. How do you as a body feel about that, and what's the level of engagement that you have with the government where that is concerned?
I think in terms of vehicles, probably we jumped the gun. It is you don't ban the importation before you have built capacity. We should have built capacity, have vibrant motor assembly plants in the country, support them, get them to produce as many low-cost vehicles as possible, those that the majority of Zimbabweans are going for in the Japanese market. Let them be manufactured here. When they are available, then you can say, okay, now I think we could ban. You see, because the banning, I don't think it has helped so much, except of course making it more painful for the people.
Did the government put the horse before the cart?
Yes, I think this is exactly what happened, because pretty much what you require is the capacity. So if the capacity is right, then you can ban for any product, as it were. Remember, we had in 2016 we had ASI 164 of 2016. We banned. We actually protected the market. We should have seen a lot of momentum by the local players to be able to rise up to the challenge, set up those production plans, and also even get some tax holidays from government. And so basically it is a case of chasing the wind, because once we have banned, still there's a lot of corruption. We have also seen that there's still a lot of other people that are bringing those vehicles anyway.
Right.
So we don't want to do that, because at the end of the day, the importation of those vehicles was indicative of the people wanting to store value in something that they can hold. If you put together your money, you've done your mukando or whatever. When you receive it, you want to store your money somewhere that you can see. You don't want to keep it as cash. So you probably buy a low-cost vehicle. And for some, that had become a symbol of wealth storage. So I think we need to revisit such policies. But coming back to the tax environment, the taxation environment, I think it's still quite punitive. And we could learn from even the Asian tigers. If you look at how their strategy was, at least to make sure that we make the taxation environment quite friendly. We give ourselves, our domestic investors, enough and sufficient time for them to, to pull their resources together and their feet, up and running again. And then we can after they have done that, we could then go back and start, collecting taxes. Because so far there is a lot of evasion. I don't think, if you ask me, the 70% informal sector is not even contributing to the fiscus. So, and even some businesses may even wish to go informal because of the aggressive nature of our tax authorities. I think that is one area that most businesses have not been happy about. And in our case, remember we were talking about SI. The statutory instrument on VAT on rice, which government woke up and decided to collect VAT from the sector backdated to 2017 February, and we are in 2021, and we are saying, but surely something could have been done right. So those are the policies that I'm talking about, to say they don't seem to work towards protection of domestic investors, because in trying to lure foreign investors. We need also to do more to protect the domestic investors. Let's also create more pull factors and more favorable environment, the doing business environment, all the issues that I've spoken about for the local investor, that which one who has already committed domestic resources to start up. They should be supported one way or the other through the taxation environment.
Right. Let's talk about the e-commerce. A lot of retailers have gone online. We could speak about OK Zimbabwe. They've got their online facility. We could talk about Gateway Stream platform, which has got several groceries that are offered on that very platform, among many others, which would be seen as a positive development, especially given the developments that came about with the COVID-19. How do you feel about those prospects, and what is your body doing to encourage online trade?
The Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers has been part of the e-commerce foundation since 2016. We have participated at the e-commerce summit in Barcelona almost every year since then in succession. Of course, because of COVID, we couldn't continue. But of course, hopefully this year and other coming years, we should be back in Barcelona. We've been part of that, and we've brought in a lot of information that we've shared even with authorities since 2016 to say the world is going online. So it is quite critical that we also start setting up online shops. It is critical that we also ensure that goods can actually be delivered to one's doorstep without them having to go to the to the store itself. But of course, we are doing that with the clear recognition that the brick and mortar still suffice. Why? Because of cultural and traditional beliefs and mentalities, where the customer still wants to go into the store and physically select the particular good. But COVID happened. It was a blessing in disguise, as it were. Nothing good about it, but it was a blessing in disguise in as far as pushing online trading and e-commerce in the country. Even if you look at most of the fast food players in the country, almost all of them have gone online, and even in the retail and the wholesale sector, quite a number of big players have opened online stores, and even some individuals in the country, they've also started online shops, and they're actually using their small vehicles. But what do we need? We need to probably work with entities like Zimpost. They've got quite a number of post offices almost in each and every locality, because one of the critical components of driving e-commerce is the infrastructure. So the infrastructure is in terms of the delivery system. How do you deliver? Who delivers your goods? And where are they delivered to? They should probably be delivered to where the people are, sometimes to a particular center where someone can walk and collect. That is something that we still fall far short. And one of the critical components is also the cell phone, smart cell phone ownership. It has got also to increase.
And the $50 tax?
I'll come to that. Before that, I need to talk about data.
Okay.
Data is one key component. Unfortunately, here we don't seem to be realizing how data can transform the online and e-commerce trading in the country, and how even government can also even get the downstream, positive effects from ensuring that internet data is accessible to the generality of the people, and so that they can participate online. It increases traffic, it increases their appetite, it increases their participation. It also then increases the uptake of goods and services that are sold online. Even in other countries right now that we have visited, you can actually get treated over the phone by your doctor, diagnosed, and then the next thing, you're actually given a prescription, and then you log off, and then you log in onto a pharmacy that is selling some drugs. I need this drug, then it's delivered to your doorstep. Everything is done whilst you are in your home. So that is also what we need to be looking at. Remember, On top of the e-commerce that we're talking about, there is also the issue of the fourth industrial revolution, the issue of artificial intelligence. We are moving, but at a very lethargic pace. We could do more. We can actually do much more by ensuring that data is accessible. The 50%, rather the $50, I think that should be scrapped off. I don't think there was a lot of consultation on that.
As we close, what is the outlook for the industry in 2022?
It's quite positive, and we certainly looking at growing it. Of course, given the review that has happened on the national growth, certainly we may not reach the 5.1 that we reached last year, because of even the global developments that are taking place right now. But certainly, I think we can grow by about 4.5%.
Danford Muntashu, the president of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers. Sir, thank you very much for joining us on Conversation Zimbabwe.
Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. Thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe to our social media handles at Equity Access to stay tuned for more content. From the Equity Access team and at Conversation Zimbabwe, Dank, until next time, stay safe.